So I want to switch gears for a moment. As you know, there has been, I wouldn't say maybe not necessarily more of a negative focus on DEI, but definitely a greater spotlight on DEI, which is sparking conversations around the functionality of diversity, equity, and inclusive practices in the workspace, in organizations, in schools. And so if you were to just kind of have your own sounding board about this, what would you say makes inclusivity important? Why does it matter?
Oh, it's so many things. For one, me personally, I feel like when I am included or when people who look like me and sound like me and feel like me are included in a conversation, it makes me feel like, okay, I can include myself a little bit more. It makes me more confident in being able to like say something. I have two signs in my classroom that say, one says everyone belongs and the other says everyone is welcome. And I refer to that sign at least once a week, at least, because I remind students to look up at that sign when they have something that is judgmental to say about somebody else.
Hmm.
Oh, get out, you ugly, or something along those lines. And I'm looking at them like, that's not what the sign says. The sign says everyone here is welcome, you included, and so are they. And so, specifically, it allows students to not only accept the other people around them, but it also allows them to accept themselves. And a lot of the negative comments that kids make about each other are comments that they either A feel about themselves or B they've heard someone else say that to them. Um and they do know that when they come into my space, like I'm going to be the person that is going to stand up for them. I am going to give you feedback if you talk negatively about someone's appearance or something that they don't have any control over. So I think for me, it's so important for myself in my like when I'm out in public, in my friend groups, things like that. It's just important to feel included, but it's also important to like check your biases and like be able to tell someone or give someone feedback on, yo, I didn't really feel like you really thought about X, Y, and Z thing when you said that. Like there was something, I've been skinny my entire life. I've never had any issues with being overweight. And I said something insensitive about being overweight in my friend group. One of my friends told me, and she was just like, I think you could have said this differently. Like maybe you could have said this. And I was like, that's super valid. I didn't even think about that. Thank you for letting me know so I can say it in the future because we have unconscious biases that we're unaware of.
Mhm.
And how are we going to check those biases if we're not being inclusive? And if we're not being inclusive and someone checks us on it, are we going to be inclusive of that person, right? Like, are we going to be like, well, that's just how I am. I don't know what to tell you. Or is it going to be a thing of, you know what, let me think about it, reflect on it, and let me like, I probably could have said it a different way. So inclusivity is important on so many levels for me. If it just feels like it's a part of life, it's a part of my life. And I think for people who are intolerant of inclusivity, um, I feel like what else are we intolerant of? You know,
Mhm.
it's like what like I feel like can you like let's question that. Let's question why are we not more tolerant? What are you afraid of?
Yeah. Robi, I was literally just giving a presentation and I shared one of my favorite pieces of insight research from Dr. Bruce Perry, who was actually the psychologist who worked with Oprah in developing her scores. And one of the things that he says is that when we receive signals from other people that we belong, it decreases the likelihood of maladaptive behaviors and
Mhm.
increases chances of being able to better connect and better just engage. And so I think that's exactly what you are naming there. You've established norms with that poster, and so then there's accountability around that.
Definitely.
And absolutely naming just what is it that can make us intolerant of inclusivity. Maybe it's because we're used to being included. Maybe we don't know what it's like to be excluded. And so there are a lot of really poignant conversations that we can continue having around that. Yeah. And so I do want to ask you, how do we ensure that our classrooms are inclusive of students from diverse backgrounds, even when that diversity might be limited within the school or within the classroom?
Yeah, that's a really good point, that last point that you made, because I think if you don't have support from your administration and from your school, it is 100 times harder to try and create that practice in your classroom. I'm lucky enough to have that support from my administration and from my coworkers, for the most part, where I can set that tone in my classroom and I am echoed around the building. So that makes it a lot easier. Um, I might even stretch to say, there really is no way to ensure 100% that you have an inclusive classroom, because you have, like, there are 30 different personalities depending on where you teach.
Mhm.
So I think the most important thing is to remind students to be consistent about your reminders and giving feedback of inclusivity, because what you're going to start to notice is that the kids will start reminding each other, and when that starts happening, that's when you're making progress. um it's really hard because kids say crazy things all the time that are like, that's not inclusive, that was out of pocket, like you can't say stuff like that. um and you have to explain that to them, and like, not in a frustrated way. Like, you have to take the time to hear them out, think
Mhm.
about, like, why would you do that, why would you say that, and then give them another way to respond. Give them an opportunity to tell you what is another way that you could have responded that might be a little bit better. If they don't have one, then you can offer your advice. And so for me, it's not a thing of like, like my classroom is completely inclusive, because it's really not. Like, kids say things all the time. This year, a kid says something to me, not to a kid, to me, about being a part of the LGBTQ community, and like how I was like confused. Now, yes, this was in a situation of like a fit of rage because he was angry about something, whatever the case is. My administration supported me, but that just tells you right there, like, as much work as I do in letting everyone know that this is an inclusive space, kids are still going to have whatever opinion they have, and they're still going to speak on their experiences that they've learned at home or out in the street or wherever they learned it, um, because that's what they've been taught. And so, living in my truth every day at my school and like continuing to message the things that I message, I think overall, like in the long run, will make a really big impact. And I think it still does make an impact right now, because kids, come up to me all the time about how, they want to come out, or, they want some advice on how they can be more their true self, what it's like to be me, because, they follow my account, they follow my social media, they see the amount of love and the amount of hate that I get.
Mhm.
So, I think just me being my true self is valuable. But I don't think there's really a way for it to be like completely 100% inclusive, because that's just not the world we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's continually a work in progress.
Definitely, yeah.
The work will always be there for us
Mhm.
to do. And so, speaking of which, Robi, what do you see and define as the major barriers surrounding the LGBTQ plus experience in with inclusion in schools today?
Well, speaking on that, I want to say from my personal experience, because I'm at KIP, I think I've gotten lucky with inclusivity at my school. That doesn't mean that I don't ever feel like people are judging me or making it like weird because, they feel like whatever they feel. I don't know. But for the most part, like I said, my administration does support like who I am as a person. But I do feel like a lot of the things that I'm seeing in terms of roadblocks that people are facing as LGBTQ plus teachers, specifically non-binary teachers, people have issues with using the correct pronouns. People have issues with saying Teacher Robi or teacher instead of Miss or Mister. I haven't had that issue at my school because it's been a thing of that is Teacher Robi. It like how can you tell someone what their name is? That doesn't really make sense. And nobody in my school has questioned that. Not a parent, not a student. It really hasn't been that, which I'm really lucky about because I see it all the time on social media. And friends who I have that are LGBTQ plus who talk to me about the issues they face. Just in general, parents who are intolerant and are teaching their children to be intolerant, kids who are very hateful and don't really even know why. And it's like, as a teacher, you have to be the bigger person. You just kind of have to explain or understand or at least like try to get your point across, but in a respectful way, which I think is important. But I also think it's really important to have a support system and to have people who you have surrounded yourself with, who value you, who love you, who care about you, and who remind you of like who you are as a person. Because you can easily fall into a hole of, I just like, what am I even doing here? Like, why? What's going on? Like, I've myself have fallen into that hole. I myself have questioned, should I continue doing social media? Should I continue doing what I'm doing? Is this is this worth it? Is it positive? Am I helping anyone? And I'm reminded by the people around me, yes, you are. You are helping so many people. You are, the reason that I went into teaching as a non-binary person. Like, thank you so much. And these are from like, people who follow me on social media, but also like I said, the people who are around me, my girlfriend, my parents, my administration. If I didn't have their support, I would not continue doing what I'm doing, because it can be very heartbreaking and like sad when people tell me that I need to, unalive myself because I'm posting a video about teaching and I'm non-binary. And that's really it. Because I'm non-binary, because I go by they them pronouns, people feel like I just shouldn't be in the classroom. And that's their like that's their intolerance speaking.
Robi, in addition to having your personal support system, how would you suggest or recommend to others who might be facing similar challenges? How would you recommend they navigate potential conflicts with parents, community members who hold differing views, who hold opposing views, who hold um, incredibly negative views about who they are? What can they do to build the resiliency that it sounds like you have been able to over time?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that it really is, it's a number of different things. It's hard to say. I think people are going to respond differently depending on, their personal experience. But what I will say is bringing it back to the reminder of inclusivity and being aware that your child is one child in a classroom full of 30. And it is so important to remind your child and everyone else to be respectful of people's differences, because it's not just worrying about LGBTQ. And I think that's the thing for me too, is that the inclusivity doesn't, it's not just for the LGBTQ community. And I think that a lot of times families and parents have this like idea that if you're part of the LGBTQ community, what I've heard and what I've seen is that parents are like, you have this agenda and you're like pushing this agenda onto their children. So like I've heard parents in my comment section saying you're teaching the kids how to be gay. And to that I say, you can't teach anyone how to be gay. It's impossible. If you're gay, you're gay. If you're not, you're not. And there's no way to teach someone how to do that. I think there's a internal fear that people have, and I think that comes from the way that people are treated if they're a part of the LGBTQ community. Parents have seen it. It's not great. You really, there are a lot of roadblocks that you're going to face, and so I think that fear is what is, I think, like preventing parents from being more inclusive. And I think it's also like this idea of like black and white, right? Like you're gay or you're straight, you're a woman or you're a man, these binaries that we have that I just do not hold myself to. I really do not. I really feel like a lot of things are a spectrum. And I question things. I question a lot of things. So the biggest thing, because I wouldn't go back and forth with a parent like that, I would just be like, it's really important to be inclusive in my space and in my classroom. And it's important that all students feel included, not just one type of student. It opens kids to be more vulnerable, to be more invested in their education when they are understanding of that inclusivity, that not only them, but other students around them. One thing my school does really well is it protects our students who are special education. What I appreciate about my school is that they've created a culture where all students, including students who have special needs, are included, are invested. So creating that environment is not just for LGBTQ, you know what I'm saying? It's for the population at large.
Right.
So many of us are different. So many of us don't fit into that box.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that's what they want you to think, that you have to fit into that box. And I'm just like, no, you don't. You don't have to fit into it. And it's okay. It's actually fine. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
You mentioned having students who approach you and just ask for counsel. And I know that in a lot of school board meetings that we've been hearing, a question that comes up over and over again is, how do we support students and teach students about their own self-empowerment, about identity in an age-appropriate manner? And so what would you say to that?
It's really important to understand that it does need to be age appropriate, because I think with social media now and technology, the way that students, like I wasn't behaving in the way that students behave right now in 6th and 7th and 8th grade. I wasn't cursing the way that they curse. I'm talking about the population I teach specifically, because that's what I can speak to. So it can feel like the students have just such a deep understanding because of the way that they talk or how they, address certain issues. But at the end of the day, they are still children and they are still kids. And so I always remind myself that, how would I receive this information if I was in middle school? Now I'm about to be 30, so it's been a minute. It's been a while, but I still do feel like it wasn't that long ago that I was in middle school. And so I will say the most important thing is letting the student lead the conversation and just being a listening ear and the voice of reason. The role you need to play is a listener, an advocate, and just someone to remind them that like they are okay no matter what.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom packed in there, Robi, in that approach with students. First and foremost, listen to them, identify who their resources are. Also help to identify who specializes in whatever niche they might be asking about. And also, of course, just relating and caring and being a voice of reason for them. Thank you so much, Robi. You have provided so much insight, so much experience, and really appreciated this conversation. I took a lot from it. Where can people contact you? Where can people learn more and seek out some more of your wisdom?
Yes. Please look at all my platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook even. I'm at Teacher Robi. So you can just look up Teacher Robi and I will pop up. You can literally
ROBI?
ROBI. Yep.
Perfect.
Yes. And
Thank
I hope
you.
people reach out. I really do. It's really important for me to share what I've learned. And I feel like when you're a part of the LGBTQ community, it can sometimes feel like you're alone if you don't have a support system. But reach out. There are supports out there. So you can find yours. Definitely.
Beautiful. Thank you, Robi. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. I hope that this brought you as much wisdom and value as it did me. Take care and hope to see you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.